practice their estimation. So, okay, paying $20 a month for data that I could actually use from the panels. I could bring it into my classroom and have students look at a weather forecast for the next 7 days, look at the historical data that I ended up having from the solar panels, time of year, weather conditions, all that was sort of denoted for them, so they could end up making predictions. And that would, on Monday, they had to make a 7-day prediction based on local forecast. And sure enough, it really worked out well. Initially, they were horrible, but if you end up telling the students, you end up getting a pack of Smarties if you have less than 5% error on a daily basis, you'd be amazed at how things come around. So it really worked out very well, and we sort of jumped into it. So we've had a solar array on our home since 2013. I really never thought about what I was going to do whenever I got done with teaching, because I didn't think I was ever going to get done with teaching, but sure enough, it came in 2021. So we decided, I decided, and in June when I left, I ended up getting a job with Lifestyle Solar in July of that year. So just to put a little nutshell on it, I've been a homeowner with it sitting on my roof for that period of time. I thought that it was important for me to explore this before I ever delved into something else and actually try to talk to somebody else, because I'm not a salesperson. And if all of you have probably dealt with somebody knocking on your door, possibly saying, hey, your house is really great for solar, yada, yada. That is not me. I do not do business that way. I like to be an educator and share with people. I'm an advocate for the technology. And I chose the company I wanted to work with because I knew that they ended up using decent equipment and decent methods. By the way, at any time, I'm very comfortable fielding questions. If you end up having something that prompts something from you, I really sort of miss that. So, fire away. I'm not going to get into a long, detailed scientific background about how solar systems work, but I did want to at least give you some background about how systems are designed. They've changed over the past couple decades. The basic concept is this: this building itself is being rained on by energy. You can either absorb it or you can fight it. And with a solar array, you're going to be absorbing roughly, now with today's panels, about 20% of the light that comes in can be converted to electricity. So what happens at the panel, the electrons get kicked free, because whenever there's light on them, it'll basically kick in electrons, and that will start moving in an electric circuit. That creates direct current, which your house cannot use. It's like a regular old alkaline battery. You can't you plug that into your home. You have to convert it to AC or alternating currents. If you remember back in your science days between Tesla and Edison and the fight they had. If you don't, that's okay. If you do, that's for you. But it has to be converted from DC to AC. So there is another little attachment on there called an inverter. Modern systems generally end up going with a little tiny inverter on each one of the panels that changes the DC electricity to AC electricity that you can use, so that if one panel gets shaded, it doesn't affect everybody else. But any questions on that at all? I know probably many of you are saying, I'm going to fall asleep in about 35 seconds. So the next item is like how a company would be working on designing a system. There are a few parameters that you need to look at whenever you're looking to change or figure out whether a house will be good for solar or whether it won't. So this is a typical design. I'm not sure if you can see it very clearly, but in the first one I end up having here, you can see that there's a little yellow line around the peak of the roof and around the side. Local fire codes, actually state fire codes, require that there is a 3-foot avenue for firefighters to end up having access to a home, the home's roof, so the firefighters don't have to walk on the panels in order to end up cutting a hole if they need to end up doing that to get into an attic space. So you can't put panels on those particular locations. You have to leave an avenue for it. So whenever the first thing that will come with a satellite image that we end up using to get an idea about whether it should work or not is there's a design path that's put on there for us. Then we can place the panels on the back of the, or whichever surface on the home works best. Couple things that sort of play into goods and bads, because as you all know, I mean, you probably know better than just about anybody, that homes are designed significantly differently. They're oriented differently. So the roof design itself, as you can see here, if you end up having some peaks like this, it really sort of limits your space and your ability to place panels in that location. So the more peaks you would end up finding on a roof, probably the less desirable it is for solar panels to be able to fit there. Doesn't exclude them, it just limits the number that you can end up placing in that spot. The orientation of the roof. You of all people, again, probably know better than anybody else. There are individuals that end up saying, hey, I don't want to end up seeing them on the front of my roof. Well, if the front of your house is pointed south, it's a shame, because that's the best plane for the for solar arrays to be seated on. An optimal roof would probably end up having the back of the home facing south. So in this particular case, that southwest orientation that you can end up seeing there actually works out pretty well for this particular client. But there are, I mean, many of you have seen that there are homes that end up not really having to worry about that too much. They say, I don't really care what works with it. If I can save myself, you know, a few $1,000s, I'm probably going to end up choosing to do that. Again, fire codes, the state has a minimal 3-foot variance, but there are some municipalities, as I'm sure Kirk is probably going to describe later, that may end up having differences there. The pitch of the roof. The steeper the roof, generally, the less desirable that's going to end up being for solar panels. So if it's a 45-degree roof or a higher, you're not going to be able to see panels on that, because it simply won't be a great fit for it. If it has a very slight roof pitch, you actually may end up finding out that even the northern side, which is the least desirable side of the house, may end up working okay, because the shadow from the roof won't be overcast on the front of the house, or that part of the house, the northern part of the house, at that time. So it may end up working out for that. And as you can see over on the green side here, tree shading. You may have the best orientation, great roof pitch, no obstructions whatsoever. But if you end up having 65-foot trees that are located all around the home, unless the owner is willing to trim or remove trees, it's probably not going to end up working. Now, I know that, and I'm just going to ask for, I always like to end up having participation. I'm just kidding myself. So, how many of you have seen solar panels on homes that you have sold? Okay. How many of you have seen them where the solar panels are buried by trees, and it doesn't look like it really is the panels are getting much light? Notice there aren't a lot of hands up in the air for that. I'm glad you saw one. I've seen a few, and I just sort of shake my head. Or whenever somebody's got a steep roof and they have solar panels on the northern side of the house, I'm like, there was a salesman that was working overtime, and they convinced people to do that. And again, I think it's important for us to end up recognizing that all companies are not the same, all sales individuals are not the same. And it's important for your clients to understand that the technology does work. I'm living proof of it. But the fact that if you can just give your individuals that you're speaking to a little bit of education on it, they can find out what does and what does not work. So going on to the next item, you can see the colorization. I'm not sure if you had, I did this in black and white, but the colorized version here The brighter the section of the roof, according to what we end up having on the satellite image, it shows the optimization for that particular plane of the roof. So the vast majority of companies that work here in Pennsylvania have to really pay attention to, according to all those different parameters. It may be a chimney stack that's a little bit high that casts shadow, but we actually can get a pretty good efficiency rating on every single individual panel to find out whether that panel makes sense to be placed there or not. Sometimes it's okay to place a panel that's not fantastically efficient because it simply bumps up the overall average of the amount of electricity that you can generate for that particular plant. The goal would be to generate all their power from it at a cheaper rate than what they're currently paying, because what we end up doing is offering price control. They can only go up by about 2.99% is the typical item that we end up having for our clients. So it locks it in for 25 years. And I think that, how many of you have noticed that your power rates have gone up? Anybody? Oh, surprising. 1, 2, almost everybody. Hey, there you know. So yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, what's the maximum amount of panels you can put on?
Well, again, it's limited by the fire code. So you can end up in this particular one. I could definitely have placed panels here. I could have placed panels on the front. And I wouldn't be placing on that side of the peak, but it depends on the home. But PP&L specifically in our particular region, and most other power companies sort of limit you to 110% of what that home is currently consuming. So they don't want a home generating 200% of their power needs, because that in itself, you would be kicking out a lot of power into the grid. And the last thing that PP&L and Pico and all the different companies that we talk about, last thing they want to do is upgrade transformers at faster rate than they're comfortable with. What this actually does, whenever a home or a structure is going to generate the power that it's using, it actually allows them a larger amount of time to replace equipment. Because if you're using that, basically what ends up happening in the home is the power is generated in the panel, it's converted to AC electricity, goes directly into the home, it gets consumed. Anything that you generate over that, that's what gets kicked back out to PP&L or whatever company servicing that area. So that would be a relatively small amount. And so there isn't a lot of power being transferred whenever you're generating most of your own power. But the nice thing about that is that they then have a little bit more time to upgrade transformers, because they're not pushing a lot of power to homes. A lot of that is already being used on site. So it allows them a little bit more time to end up upgrading their transformer equipment. Now, if everybody in the street chooses to go on it, now that creates a problem that you may end up having to upgrade the transformers, because during the sunlight, time of the day, you have a whole bunch of power going out and not much coming in. So that actually might require that. But to answer your question, generally 110% of what that house is consuming. Any other questions on that?
Is there a weight limit that roofs can tolerate, like older homes? Because I've seen it on older homes and obviously newer homes, but these panels.
Great, that's a great question. The panels that we end up using and the majority of panels out there are less than 50 pounds a piece. So whenever you talk about weight loads and everything like that, it generally doesn't add too much to it. But one thing that we end up doing, at least my company does, we do a site audit where we actually take a picture of the roof trusses from underneath to get an idea of what they can end up having. They don't add much in the way of an additional load to that. What loads are added are wind loads and things like that, which all of these, and I'm going to get that into it a little bit later, they're all, Pennsylvania requires 110 mile an hour wind rating for the panels and basically how they're attached to the trusses. So when it talks about snow loads and things along those lines, the panels are actually per square inch are stronger than the roof surface that they're sitting on. So they can handle quite a bit of weight. But generally, if you end up having snow or things like that, the snow leaves those panels because they're black, and even if they're covered in snow, that is going to melt that surface faster than it would on the roof surface? It's a great question. So getting into that, this is basically how we attach those to it. The panels don't sit directly on the roof. They actually sit on rails that are attached to the roof, and they aren't attached to every single truss. They're attached to alternating trusses. It slides underneath the shingle. It's waterproofed underneath there, and then drilled into the truss itself. Our company offers like a 10-year leak-free warranty. We don't generally put a solar array on a home that has a 15-year or older roof surface. What we end up doing is we'll say, okay, if it's, 17 years or something like that, and it was a basic 3-tab shingle, the panels could be out there for 40 years. So you probably want to avoid putting it on that. So our company actually will not do that. What we will do is say, we can provide you ways of financing a new roof. And sometimes you can end up getting a roof, depending on if it's an optimal house where you could generate 100% of the power really efficiently. We've had the roofs basically be put on the home for the same price that the client is currently paying for their electric power. And then there's price control on top of that. So there are some ways to end up making that happen. I made it a point to get up on the roof with them. I said, treat me like an intern. I want to do some installs. So I did some installs with my company because I do my business through word of mouth, people that I know. Being here, I've taught thousands of students, parents. I had a student come up to me, a couple of students actually come up to me and say, hey, my grandmother or grandfather really enjoyed having me as a teacher. That's great. So I know a lot of people, and then it's through word of mouth after that. But the fact is that if I was going to put my name to it, I wanted to make sure that it was being done right. So compared it to what was on my home, and I'm very happy with what I have on my home currently. And it was superior, so I decided to end up working with them. Any questions on this at all? Okay. How many? Oh, yes, question.
So what would you do if they have to get moved? Like what do you do?
Well, there's a couple different methods. Me personally, our company has a company that they work with directly where you can merge the two items together. I have often tried to end up finding local companies to get them a good roofing price. I always tell my clients to get a few quotes. And I'm sure that all of you have dealt with this before. One of my sons, I was speaking to Kirk earlier about one of my children's experience. He's a geologist, but they just bought a home in Mechanicsburg 9 months ago, and got married. They moved into a house that was way beyond what I thought she paid for their first house. But I won't get into that payment. And he had to get a new roof. And I said, I think your roof can last another 8 or 10 years. But he was convinced that it needed a new roof. So I said, well, let my company, we'll give you a roof quote. I said, I don't want you to go with us, but I want you to get a quote that makes sense. And I know, having dealt with them before, the company will put together a good, project plan for you. So I said, you need to get at least, a couple others too. Well, he went with a couple others, and all of them were around the same price point, around like $22,000, somewhere around there, for a Owens Corning 50-year warranty shingle. Great. New ridge vents, all that kind of stuff. And then he had a company that said, the salesperson came in and said that, well, you could pay anywhere from $70,000 to $130,000 for a roof like this. And they already had the other 3 quotes. And so I shared with them that, or he just listens, and they got down the price, and he said, okay, what we're going to offer you is a roof with these items, the same things that were on the lists of the other 3 clients, for $68,000. This is a well-known, well-advertised contractor. Not saying any names, but you all know the disparity there is between roofing costs and things like that. And I'm sure that you all deal with that before a sale. You're looking at, okay, is this gonna be an issue that's gonna hold things up or not? We have the same kind of issue, but we have to we actually take a look at the shingles to see if there's any moss, any curling, if the aggregate has been moving into the, it's been flushing down into the gutters to get an idea about how well it's gonna last. I say all that because on the home that I was showing you here, my house, you'll notice that I did not adhere to any fire codes because there were tagging at that time. So I said, put as many panels on my house as you can, and I actually had them put it on the stoop, which we are not allowed to do. But this home was built in '92, and it had the cheapest 3-tab shingle you could possibly get was used on the house. And we were looking in 2012. And if you do the math, you can understand that my 20-year roof was beyond its life expectancy whenever I put that on. But the physical science teacher and me recognized that what are the things that degrade a roof? It's ultraviolet radiation. It's the significant heating and cooling that ends up loosening the aggregate and causing it to slide. It's the direct rainfall that ends up causing that. All those kinds of things sort of get the adhesive and things like that to sort of weaken and break down. And I said, well, if I cover it in glass, I'm not gonna have any problem. So I went up with a person. I did a bunch of different jobs to support my teaching job. One of them was roofing. And so the person I worked with, I had him replace some of the flashing that was around each one of the PVC stacks. And I said, well, we'll put it on. So it's been on there. The roof underneath it looks like the day that we put it on. The only thing you need to worry about is making sure that squirrels don't get underneath there because they think it's really nice, cozy space. But beyond that, the roof underneath is protected. That's what the panels basically are essentially do. Yes.
What does your homeowner's insurance think about that?
My homeowner's insurance, well, here's the funny thing, the roof on the front side has been replaced. I actually had to get that 3-tab single. On the back, really, there was nothing that affected that. And whenever you end up putting the panels on, I know that I've actually put on for some insurance adjusters. They've said that if you were a direct owner of the panels, it added like $10 to $15 to the cost of their homeowner's insurance through that period of time. And the net benefit that they were receiving was significantly larger than that. But it really didn't impact that all that much. From what I'm aware of now. Hey, if I talk to my homeowner's insurance agent right now, they might end up having to decide it. Yes.
Seen a lot of changes in the insurance industry regarding roofs here in central Pennsylvania. Do you think that the changes in the insurance industry is going to affect the insurability of roofs in the future?
I really, no, I'm not an insurance expert, so I'm not going to end up pretending to do that. I can give you my sort of background with this right now. I know that when we offer a warranty on ours, a leak-free warranty for 10 years, regardless of the condition of the roof, I know that we won't put them on a roof that ends up showing any flaws. So what the panels essentially do is they serve as an additional protection for the roof. They don't really add a wind load because the profile of the roof itself isn't being changed much at all. It's only about an inch or two above the top of the roof surface. So it doesn't really add wind loads or anything like that at all. So as far as the probabilities, and that's what insurance companies deal with, the probabilities of something happening as a result of placing panels on top, and actually would decrease, I would think, the issues that an insurance company would have to incur because of that. But that's my layman's idea. Any other questions? Yes.
So what if you have a house that has them on it and somebody needs to take them off for whatever reason?
Depends on the company that you have. Now currently with PPAs, and I ended up having this question asked by my clients because for the longest period of time in 21 to 20 24, I was only dealing with individuals that were going to purchase the system through our financing or they were buying cash. I didn't deal with power purchase agreements or leases because I thought that they were a bit problematic at that particular time, and they didn't offer the benefits of the solar renewable energy credits, the SRECs that were offered. So at that time, I really didn't have an issue with that. But now, because the tax credits have gone away, which is 30% of the cost of the system, and for, you know, if you're talking about a $33,000 system, that's a pretty good chunk of money there for a tax credit. Whenever that disappeared, the opportunity for people to end up realizing a financial benefit from a solar system really changed from ownership to the power purchase agreements, where it's to the benefit of the company putting it on because they own the system, but also to the client because they have price control for 25 years. And as we've seen, and as I'll show you in additional, well, there's the graph there. This is what average Pennsylvania residential power prices have looked like. They were quite stable for a very long time, but as you can see, that stability is gone. We currently, I think we're using like 14.2 terawatts of electricity every year in the state of Pennsylvania. By 2030, now with all of the competing issues with data centers, etc. How many have heard of data centers? Who hasn't? If you cover your head, you've probably still heard about it. The consumption is supposed to be near 30 terawatts, almost double what we currently are using. So it makes sense. I'm getting back to your original question, which was again.
But if someone has to take down.
Yes, right. Okay.
Where do they go? What's the?
Okay, well, if they are removed, basically, if the leasing company or the power purchase agreement company, they would take them. They are recycled. And right now, recycling practices weren't all that great initially. And I've heard, you know, a lot of individuals had an issue with solar because what do you do with the panels when you get done? They are between 95 and 97% recyclable. That's all of that basically can be retained. If you throw them out, that would, you know, you don't throw them into a landfill, or you'll probably speak to the landfill issue with all the heavy metals and things like that are in it. But now all that's recoverable. It's actually cheaper than finding the material again. So recycling the panels actually makes an awful lot of sense now. Okay, so just to go back to this point, why solar right now? The cost of electricity is going up, whereas this is what photovoltaic prices have gone per kilowatt of generation. So long story short, the panels have become significantly more efficient and they cost about the same as what they were. So the panels that I end up having, the system, if I would mount the same system that I have currently on my house, it costs about the same as the systems we're currently placing, but they're generating 40% more power than what my system costs. So panels have gotten significantly better. They've gotten less expensive per kilowatt. So it makes sense to be able to do that. Some key details about the compensation. Some individuals think, you know, if you end up getting a solar array, your electricity is free. Of course, it's not free. The power purchase agreements that many companies offer, mine does, it's zero upfront. You don't put any money towards, you know, if you need to get anything from the township, building permits, etc., applying with PPL, there are costs with that. We pay those. The only thing that they end up paying is a monthly fee once they start generating for the power that they're going to be using. But if a home, I actually end up having a local resident here, one of the first that I placed on there, we said that we could generate about 92% of their power was our estimate. but I spoke to Adam, he's become a very good friend, taught 3 out of his 4 kids. And said, you know, you use a lot of power. And I think, you know, maybe you turn off a few lights or you don't run your pool off for 24 hours a day, which you don't need to. And a few other things that like I said, you probably would be able to save a little bit on one, maybe generate all of your power. Well, they went on an energy diet and went from us being able to generate 90% of the power to us generating 110% of the power. So he was getting the solar renewable energy credits, which are offered whenever you are an owner of the system, not when you have a power purchase agreement. And he ended up also getting checks annually from PP&L at the end of each fiscal year, which for PP&L is in May. They have a true up period where if you have a balance of power that you have sent them that you have not consumed, they have to pay you the rate that they're charging their clients for that power. So he additionally gets checks from them every May now because they've cut their power consumption. And now his last 2 children are off to college and it's just he and his wife. So I'm just telling you right now, knowing how expensive teenage showers are, that he's going to be saving quite a bit of money. Yes.
I'm looking at my PP&L bill. You get a generation charge, a distribution charge, and you get taxes. What don't you get when you have solar?
You read my mind. Because I actually put this as part of it, but unfortunately I ended up putting a part of the bill on here. And I don't think it's going to be part of the, it's not part of the presentation right now. So whenever you end up looking at a bill from a power company, they end up saying, here's the cost of generation. And they tell you, even if you have how many of you have like a third party supplier? Because you use it, yeah, okay, smart. So they tell you how much they're charging you per kilowatt. Let's say it's PP&L's rate right now, like 12.9 cents per kilowatt. That's their price to compare. That only is for the generation. They don't end up adding in what the distribution charge is, which is 30 to 40% of your bill. For some of the electric companies in Pennsylvania, it's 50% of your bill. So if you used $140 worth of electricity, you have a $280 bill. $140 of it was the distribution charge. They don't put that into it. So a person that's paying the PP&L rate that has a $140 bill, they may end up having a bill that's closer to $190 because of the distribution charge. So that fictitious 12.9 cents per kilowatt right now currently for PP&L is 21 cents per kilowatt. That's what we're really paying. And they don't consider that as part of it. And when you have your price to compare, the little secret that you need to be aware of is that they might offer that for 3 months. If some of you are real sticklers and you're on your bill all the time and you nerd out on that and you say, okay, I know that the time period's coming up. I only have 3 months to work on this. And at the end of 3 months, it goes up and you switch to another company. Good for you. You are in the 1% of the population that pays attention to that. In the price, I was just showing for the client that I was putting up here and I had his bill. The price to compare is 12.9 cents. And he was with a third party company. Then he was in his 6th month with that company. And unbeknownst to him, he was paying 17.9 cents for the generation portion. And then he had to pay the distribution on top of that. Because at the end of the 3-month period, they jack your prices up. So if you miss it for a month, you've completely negated whatever benefit you ended up having over that period of time, which is, I think, borderline criminal, but hey, that's for decision makers much more intelligent than I am. But the fact is that bill, what you end up getting for us, you end up having a fixed rate for the power that you generate. For my home, as an example, I generate about 60% of my power. And that rate is going to stay there for 12 months. And at the end of 12 months, it'll go up by 2.99%, a predictable amount. And the nice thing about it is like currently, at the time that I bought the system, the PPNL rate was 8 cents per kilowatt, and then the distribution charge made about 10 or 11 cents. I was paying 12 back in 2013 when I started that, so I was paying more. But now for the power that I'm generating, I'm still paying 12, and the PPNL rate's almost 22 cents per kilowatt. So you're paying for the power that you generate, but the nice thing is you don't pay any distribution charge, because that's what when we talk about going back up here, the net metering in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is only one of a couple states that offers 100% on net metering. So for every kilowatt that you send out to to the grid, you are required to get all of that power back free of distribution charge. So you don't pay any, that's why solar is cheaper, is because you don't have to pay any distribution charge on the power that you generate. So you over generate in the day, you under generate at night, but the power you're getting back, you're not paying any distribution charge for. So a client would end up having our static bill for each year goes up by 2.99%, but it's predictable. You know, it's going to go up $5 a year or whatever that is for 2.99. And then you would end up having the regular PPNL bill for the remaining portions that they have. If we can generate 110%, you still have a PPNL bill, but it would be the $17 customer charge that you have to pay just to be hooked to the grid. And really, if you compare that to if you wanted to put up a battery system to completely cut the line and cut the cord, that would be a lot more expensive. So them serving as your battery for $17 a month is actually a pretty good deal. Did that answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay, what did I answer?
On your lease program, does the consumer still pay taxes on this solar generated electricity?
No, not that I'm aware of. No,
You
No,
don't
there's-
pay anything to the state?
no.
What about when, if there's months in the winter when you're not producing a lot of solar and you have to use electricity? I think there might be taxes at that point.
No, you still are gonna end up having that, let's say that your house generates 100% of this power. Okay, so if we got it just right and you use 20 megawatts a year and we can generate 20 megawatts from a solar system. You're gonna have the $17 bill every month, but let's say right when you put the system in, let's say if you install it in May, which would be the best time to install. Because you're at that time whenever you're generating a lot more power in the summer and the winter, and you're banking that power. Whatever power at the end of the month that you haven't consumed is credited to your account. You'll see it on your bill. You have so odd many kilowatts that you've stored with PPNL. And then in the waning months, whenever you get down to January and December, January, February, those months where you're under generating, you're pulling from that bank of power. So if you were lucky enough to start off in May and you ended up generating during that time, all you're going to end up having is a $17 bill because you're going to consume the banked power. So you have the $17 bill from PPNL, and they would continue to pull from your bank until it's completely consumed, and then you start paying the rate that everybody else pays. So there's no taxes on this because you don't own the system with the power purchase agreement.
So I own my own solar panels.
Yes, okay. Good for
and-
you.
And I don't have,
Okay.
Med Ed,
Okay.
and I go months without a bill from the electric company at all.
Then you see, they waive that. PPNL does not.
So, but I'm looking at this annual true up. I don't know that I've gotten that,
Okay.
and I produce 110%.
You need to talk to MedEd.
Yes, I do.
MedEd owes you money.
Yeah,
And you should when did you put the system in?
it was up and running with all the inspections and stuff, August of 24.
Okay, so you had it on for a couple of years, yeah. if you're generating 110% of your power, that 10% that you have generated, Med owes you for that power at the rate that they're charging their customers.
Well, I'm gonna have to call them.
Yes, you will.
So,
Yeah, you do.
so that's,
And by the way, they've got a record of all that. This isn't like,
well, what am I gonna tell them? I want my annual true up.
Yeah,
money?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they
Okay.
owe you that amount.
All right, that's good to know. But that wasn't my original question. My question, going back to the SRECs, what is your thought process on once the data centers come up and running? Are the SRECs that we get, will they increase or will they decrease or will they not even be effective?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be standing.
Okay.
Because being able to predict, I had initially, whenever I first started getting into this, trying to get an idea about, okay, people in New Jersey are getting about $240 for the SREC. And when I started, we here in Pennsylvania, we're getting 28. It went up to as high as $38 for SREC. And now it's back down into the low 20s. I would have thought that with consumption going up, there would have been a lot more initiative on this. But obviously, there are other indicators in here that I have no idea what's driving that. So all I can tell you is get them while you can.
Yeah. I thought.
Anything else? Okay, I'm almost done here. Don't want to play by sleep. So again, this is sort of a comparison of apples to apples. I ended up having a 34 panel system. Each one of the panels was the best that I could end up buying in 2013 at 240 watts per panel. So it was an 8.5 kilowatt system. I'm generating about 10,000 kilowatts a year or 10 megawatts. The system that I'm placing on somebody's house here in the Enola area, there are 440 watt panels and they just got bumped up to 460 watt panels. So he's actually going to get a little bit better than this. So it's an 8.8 kilowatt system. He's going to be generating, only with 20 panels, he's going to be generating another megawatt and a half from those panels, from 14 fewer panels. So it's gotten to a time where it really does make sense for some people to at least consider it. From your perspective as a realtor, I know that there was a lot of discomfort whenever people ended up having to sign a whole bunch of paperwork and, okay, I got a lease system on there. How's this going to affect the impact of the sale of the home? I ended up having an issue refinancing my own home because I ended up having a lease system on there. And this was a while back. Since that particular point, the majority, and you're going to speak to the legalese of all this later on, Bruce, but I think that there are a lot of ways where it has become far simpler. If somebody's going to sell a home, the home buyer, I think that most of you probably would agree, it's a rare time that an individual would end up having a credit score of below 650 and be able to buy a $300,000 and $400,000 home. That makes sense? Hey, you're the professionals on that, I'm not. But for our credit ratings to transfer from one owner to another, it would end up being a 650 minimum for those individuals that have a power purchase agreement. And simply they hand over the bill, they sign the document, they hand the bill, that item over to the next owner. If it isn't, I ended up getting this from my company. You pull the system. It wouldn't be there. They would simply pull the system off the home. So that is, and with mine, there is a fee that I had to pay to take my system off, and it decreased over time. It got less and less each year. I think I'm at now $800 to pull my system after 13 years or something like that of having the system on. With my particular company, there is not a cost associated with that. Now, they don't like to talk about it because they don't want anybody pulling the systems, because they get the SRECs. And the nice thing about a power purchase agreement through our company is that we finance it, we build it, and we're the people that service it. Some companies are gonna go out there and they will build a system, and then they end up putting out, they give it to a third party that's gonna maintain the system for 25 years. That really doesn't have any skin in the game. The company that owns the system is the one that's getting the SRECs. It's in their financial benefit to continue to get that system working to its optimal position, because they have more SRECs, and then they can end up affording to give their clients a cheaper power bill. Does that make sense? Okay,
Did you say you own your system?
I do not.
But you
I
lease?
lease it, and I think I spoke to Wendell, whenever I talked to you about this. I have a leased system, but I'm gonna pull my system and I'm gonna put our system on it once I get back to my house removed.
So you generate about 60% of your
Yes.
power.
Yep.
So you're paying an electric bill.
Yep.
Paying distribution charge, and you're also paying a lease. Trying to understand the math.
The benefit is the power that I generate for that 60%, I'm paying 12 cents a kilowatt. The power that I pay for the residual above that, I'm paying 22 cents per kilowatt. So I am saving, and it's, and my lease was a locked-in payment. I pay $121 a month for probably about $150, $160 worth of power. If I would stay with PPL. So the net difference is definitely to my benefit. Does that make sense?
It does. Being that the inverse of that. Sales. Everybody's upside down.
Well, it depends on, like, first, if they went with financing. See, that, here's the one thing that and this is one thing I share with each one of the clients. A lot of clients, they can end up buying out the remainder of the system. Let's say that they still owe $20,000 in the system before they sell the home. Well, put that as for the price of the home, pay off the remainder of that, and then you can end up advertising, you have warranty power. Well, let's say they have 15 more years on their refinance. I mean, their financing of that system. Well, you have free power for 15 years. There are a lot of ways to end up making that viable option for somebody. So, anyway, if you have any other questions, there's my contact information, should be in each one of the
I
packages.
have a question.
Yes.
Let's say I'm with your company and something came up, like I have to change my roof.
Yes.
So how much does your company charge to just come and uninstall that? Because I don't think your company install roof. I have to hire a different company.
Yes. Ours is about $100 per panel to pull panels. So that's what it would cost to end up having them removed. You place your roof on and then have them reseated.
Real
Yes.
quick, if you can give me any information at all on portable solar?
Okay, if you mean those little power generating systems, I just wanted to, hey, I'm an advocate for the technology. I think it's all great, but you can power a phone. If you end up having one of those little setups, you can, if you're going camping and you want to end up having, your boom box playing, yeah, I'm from the 80s. So, it really is not a viable option unless you end up getting, like we have ground mounts that people can put in that make sense, but they're a permanent structure. So a portable, unless you're just using for a very small item, it really doesn't make one. Yes.
Steve, can we use your company to pull solar panels from another company if we need to replace our roof? You said it's $100 a
Let's see, you can send me that information. I have never done that before.
So you guys just pulled the.
Generally, yeah, because I can tell you, it's business. We thought that when the tax credits were going away, we thought that business would slow down. But unfortunately for the consumer in Pennsylvania, electric prices are not going to be going down anytime soon. I'm sorry for using so much time. If you got more questions, there's my contact information. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now we are gonna turn it over to Kirk Stoner with Cumberland County.
Okay, so Steve was good warm up there. So everyone's interested, excited in this stuff. Now we'll go something not quite as exciting. So solar regulation. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm the director of planning in Cumberland County. So we work with our 33 municipalities on a whole host of land use, transportation, environmental planning issues. So we get into planning and zoning, we get into subdivision ordinances. So have a lot of depth and knowledge on a lot of issues facing the county and facing our municipality. So I thought maybe we would get through today without mentioning data centers. Well, that failed. I think every day data centers, and we talk about data centers and everything. So it's one of the hot issues. But today we'll talk about solar. So I wanted to go over a little bit about what we're seeing at the local level on solar. Talk to you too as realtors, some of the issues you may run into as you're working with municipalities on trying to get permits for your projects and trying to get projects done. So you could run into a lot of variety out there. So quick background on me. I've been with the county for almost 25 years. I'm on our South Middleton Township. So I live in Boiling Springs. I'm on the zoning hearing board. So you see a lot of these issues come through there. Also on the state planning board, was actually just appointed chairman to that body. So we advise Governor Shapiro on a variety of issues facing the state. So really hit this issue from a lot of different levels. Seeing renewed interest in this as well, as Steve was mentioning. I'm also leading a project for Cumberland County. We're installing a 6 megawatt system on some land we own in Middlesex Township. We just got approval for that project last week, so we've been working on that. Be a net meter project, account for about 98% of our county's energy use. So savings of about $19 million over 25 years. So huge project for us. Really looking to see that come to fruition. So 2 weeks ago, I taught a zoning class, and there was anybody in the zoning class 2 weeks ago? Okay, we have a couple. So if I go off the tracks here and get something wrong, please tell me. I wanted to hit just real quickly. When we're talking about planning, how some of this stuff happens and where the authority lies, just to make sure everybody's on speed. On point, I think you're probably aware of this, but just to be sure, we're talking about our municipalities here. Okay, so we're talking about our townships and boroughs throughout the state, where you'll see that this regulation of solar energy is going to occur. It's not happening at the federal, it's not going to happen at the state, not happen at the county, be municipalities. They're going to be setting the zoning standards, the subdivision standards, and enforcing building codes that will impact your project. So we want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. So when you look at in our area here, Cumberland, Dauphin, Perry County, we've got 103 different municipalities. So a lot of different municipalities. You'll see municipalities that are very advanced, that are doing things really well. And then you'll see some municipalities that have nothing. You'll go in, maybe they don't even have zoning. So there's a lot of variety in how our municipalities are regulating solar. I mentioned this, our department, we're required by law to look at all subdivision land development plans, ordinance changes, new plans in municipalities. And the last piece there, we assist a lot of our municipalities in writing some of these plans and ordinances. So we're trying to get good planning concepts into what they're doing and maybe get some of that consistency from municipality to municipality. So how many, everyone here today, are we all residential or do we have any commercial industrial? Any commercial industrial? Yeah, we got a couple. Okay. So what I want to talk about today is primarily, there's a little bit of both. Okay. So as we get into this, I'll try and distinguish between the commercial industrial stuff, the principal use versus an accessory use. So a little bit about what we did way back in 2011. The county planning department put together some initial guidance on solar energy regulation. We've updated that successfully the last couple of years. It's really a model ordinance that we encourage our municipalities to use. We shared this guidance with the state. DEP in particular has shared it widely throughout the state. And many of our municipalities, if they have solar regulations in Cumberland County, most of them have used our model. They put some of their own stuff in it, but they're using our model as a base. So just quickly, this is a map from the National Renewable Energy Lab. Darker the color, the more suitable for solar. So you can see if we're here, around here, you can start to see it gets a little darker. Not surprisingly, you look in the Lancaster area, in the Valley land is flatter. As Steve mentioned earlier, a little bit more appropriate for solar. So how do municipalities regulate solar? So there's a couple different ways. They may have a standalone ordinance. It is not in their zoning or not in their subdivision ordinance, it's just standalone. Municipalities have the authority to do that, and it regulates solar. It may be part of their subdivision and land development ordinance. So that ordinance is going to regulate how land is subdivided, how utilities are attached. So there may be some standards in that ordinance. In most cases, the zoning ordinance is where all the play is going to be. So zoning ordinance regulates the location, the type, the intensity of land use in a municipality. So when you look at it from a solar perspective, you're going to do solar energy. It's a standalone project on its own lot. If it's going to be accessory to an existing residential unit, you're going to run into it from a zoning perspective. So that's where you're going to see most of the play. And then you have some that do nothing. So they may not have zoning. It's the Wild West. They kind of do what you want on the lot. So what do we regulate when we're talking about this, and what you may run into as realtors with solar? So I broke these into majors and minors. Okay, the majors are kind of the big issues that you'll see. The minors are the smaller ones, but if you're doing residential solar, the minors you may run into a little more. You can see here, principal versus accessory system. Okay, I forgot exactly what I have in this one. So you look at some of the majors we have here. We'll hit these in a little more detail in successive slides, same way with the minors. So first one, principal versus accessory use. So if it's a principal use on a lot, it's the only use on that lot. So for our commercial industrial realtors, that's where you're going to see that. It's the only use on the lot. It's going to be a standalone system. We've seen some of those throughout the region that are out there. A lot of those systems are commercial systems. They may be just pushing back to the grid, pushing all the energy back to the grid, like Steve was mentioning earlier. A lot of those, if they're going to be standalone with principal use on a lot, they'll be ground mounted. So it takes about 5 to 7 acres per megawatt. So for instance, the project that I'm working on in Cumberland County, although ours is going to be about 6 megawatt, we're looking at trying to squeeze it in about a 20-25 acre area. And then for a principal use, it would be permitted in specified districts. So we talk about zoning districts. They're the areas on a map that might be a commercial district, might be an industrial district, it might be an agricultural district. So when you look at the zoning ordinance, that principal use would be allowed in certain districts. What I found most often is a lot of times it may be an agricultural district where it's allowed. Land's flat, it's open for that. Also find a lot of times they're in industrial districts. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the opposition to the stuff that's out there. So a lot of times municipalities are pushing into industrial districts. Again, it's a principal use. If it's an accessory use, that means that it's secondary to another use on the lot. So if you have an existing residence on the lot, and then you're going to put some ground mounted solar out back, that's accessory use. You're going to put it on top of your house on the roof, that's accessory use. Okay, so there's two types. So that's much smaller, be secondary to the lot. In most cases, you'll see that the energy is used on site. So everything that Steve was talking about, that energy is being used by the homeowner, that's accessory use. The ground building mounted. And in most cases, it's permitted in all zoning districts. So if you're in residential, commercial, industrial, agriculture, typically that accessory use is permitted in every zoning district. You will see exceptions to that when you're out there and you're working in the community, where they may have certain districts where they don't allow accessory solar. Again, sometimes the principal solar is often considered this industrial use. It is best suited to these large flats, tracts of land. So that's where you're trying to locate some of these larger systems. That's going to be where the play's at. So in many cases, it may be agriculture, and it can compete then with farmland and conservation uses. So this is where you start to see some of the rub in the community. You see some of the opposition come up. That suddenly people don't like solar panels. They don't want to look at solar panels, right? They have all these concerns that they raise. So if we start to look at, and this is Cumberland County, if you look at where the overlay of this would happen, this is a solar suitability map. Kind of the red and the darker areas are shown where it's suitable for solar. Below here, we have our farmland preservation map. So the darker here also corresponds with our best ag soils. So when you look at some of this stuff, the best solar suitability is also in some of our best farmland. So especially when you're looking at those principal systems, principal uses that are the only use in the lot, they can consume a lot of land, you start to see a little rubble. Like, okay, from a municipal standpoint, are they preferring agriculture or they prefer an alternative energy. And that's a policy choice that municipality has to make. So the local elected officials, whether it be borough council, township supervisors, or township commissioners, they're making that choice. That choice is reflected then in their zoning ordinance and how it's permitted. And so you see some of this, see this all the time. And residents get fired up about this stuff. You know, they come out to meetings, you know, and they don't like this stuff. They'll see new solar projects coming on board and they'll come out and fight. You see this routinely. Practically every principal solar project I've seen in Cumberland County, there's been a contingent that has fought it. Question?
Solar on
That's a good question. So, can you put solar on ag preservation land? You can. Yes, with conditions. It has to be used on site. There's certain size limitations on what you can actually do on it. It has to be a small area. So that's an excellent question.
And I have a question for you, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Does the PPL, like when you started, like, it's like, say you have 30 acres, but they'll let you start out like 10 acres and you have like 1, 2, 3 projects, so you can't always do it at the same time. So aren't they limited to 3.5 megawatts?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. So with
I'm sorry, I just.
the way the accounts are set up, so our consultant has a way to get around that and put our project together.
I'm just curious.
So just a quick response to that, though, we had 8 responses to our RFP for our solar project. Some of the responses had the system split out in 2 3.5 systems, which was an inefficient use of our land. 3 or 4 of them committed and had it all together, and they had explained through the RFP how they're doing that, to be able to separate the accounts but have the project be one project.
About the setbacks, like when they just put it all together and they didn't do it per law, per person.
Yep. Right.
Question,
Oh, yeah, go.
can subdivisions through covenants regulate solar, or is that only the job of the municipality?
Okay, so if you get into covenants and restrictions, that's a civil issue. It's not regulated by zoning or subdivision. So if there's a covenant and restriction in a neighborhood that's violated, typically it's not the municipality that's enforcing that. That's enforced by a civil action of the residents that are living. Oh, good.
You mentioned that, at least the county has these large solar projects, a lot of people come out, or people tend to come out, and have some sort of resistance.
Yep.
What's the primary concern? Like, usually solar to me seems like a generally.
Yeah. Sure, okay, so if we can, we'll put that one in the parking lot, because I have a whole slide on that, okay? So we'll talk about everyone's opposition to these projects. So when we look then in a municipality of how solar is permitted, for the people in my class 2 weeks ago, we get into this in a lot of detail. For here, we'll kind of keep it high level. It could be permitted by right. So that would mean that if it's in compliance, the project is in compliance with the rest of the zoning ordinance, the use is permitted without any additional hearings or approvals. Okay. What I've seen is in most cases, accessory solar is permitted by right in a lot of municipalities. In some municipalities, then it's permitted by conditional use or special exception. So what's that? They're both permitted uses. Okay. But in the instance of a conditional use, it requires a hearing with the elected officials. So there'd be a public hearing. Then you'll talk to the governing body about the project. There'll be criteria in the ordinance. There'll be specific criteria related to solar. And then likely there'll be general criteria talking about the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So as an applicant, if you have a project like this, you're coming in to show how you're meeting those conditions that they have in the ordinance. The elected officials then, if they see that there could be a problem with your project, they may have other conditions then that they add to your approval. So this is an extra step. This extra step takes time and it costs money. Okay, so again, it's a permitted use, but there's just another hearing there. There's another opportunity for the elected officials to take a look at the project and make some reasonable additions to the permit requirements. How it's permitted. Special exception is really the same thing as a conditional use, but it's not the governing body, it's the zoning hearing board that is making that review and approval. Zoning hearing board is a quasi judicial body appointed by the Board of Commissioners or Borough Council, Board of Supervisors to hear variances and changes to the zoning ordinance. Okay, so that group, like in South Middle Township, I'm part of that. There's a 5-member zoning hearing board. I'm appointed by the Board of Supervisors, but we're quasi judicial, we're part of the court system. Have no relationship back to those elected officials. If they don't like our decision, they have to appeal our decision. Okay, so it's not something that we look back to them to say, hey, tell us how to rule on this. We're separate. So in case of talking about solar projects, conditional use, you're going to the folks that are elected. As you go and talking about that, they're elected officials, hopefully be sympathetic to you in your project. If you're on a special exception, you're going to the zoning hearing board, you're going to a hearing really with your peers and your neighbors. It may be 3 people, it may be 5 people. So, if you're working with our client, if you're doing something on your own property, and it's permitted by special exception or conditional use, it might be 2 different strategies there, how you work. Okay. I found that in a lot of cases, the zoning hearing board, this is my own opinion, sometimes can be a little easier to get ahead. You may have people in there that they don't like conflict. They don't want to take their neighbors off. So you go, and a lot of times they may be a little easier to work with. Elected officials, on the other hand, they're looking after the whole township. There may be a lot of people there. So you see that permitted. Is that, I know that's a quick overview. Is that clear for everybody? Any questions on that? Okay. It gets into the weeds a little bit. I know it's some of this planning stuff, but lot size. So this is another, this is one that you'll typically see in a lot of ordinances. We're talking about 5 to 7 acres if it's principal. But solar as a whole, it's a low intensity use, but it can consume a lot of acreage. And that's one of the concerns then. How do we consume that acreage without infringing upon some of the setbacks that are out there? We don't want it to get too big. Some municipalities want to protect the use from getting too big, especially in rural areas. So they may set a maximum lot size. So, okay, if you're going to do principal solar, the maximum lot size is 20 acres. You can't do anything above that. So that helps to protect the bigger tracts that can be used for agriculture. So you'll run into this. You'll see this, and this is all over the board. I wish there was a science to how the minimum lot sizes or maximum lot sizes were established, but it's not. In a lot of cases, it's just kind of just pulling a number, or maybe they've used an ordinance from somewhere else, and that's the number they're using. Decommissioning. This is something else that you'll see, and you definitely see this for a lot of principal projects. You may see this for accessory. Got a question?
It's just always pops in my head. Why in the world doesn't everybody with a giant parking lot have solar on it?
Good question. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, why doesn't everybody with a giant parking lot have solar on it? So it gets back to who owns the parking lot, the cost of doing so, and then a lot of what Steve was talking about too. Then who's using that energy? Right? We send it back to the grid. A lot of questions, and then maintenance and everything. And a lot of times, I think the folks that are building the giant parking lots, it's easier to build the parking lot and move on than worry about some of the other things that they're trying to produce solar. Decommissioning. So decommissioning really is at the end of the useful lifespan of the project, you commit and you remove it. So when we see principal projects, this requirement is typically there. There may be bonding requirements that someone has to come in, the developer has to put bonding requirements that are updated on an annual basis to make sure that when they're done with the project, it is removed. All the cabling and all the panels are removed. There's a time frame for doing that. The financial security is set. You may see this in some municipalities for accessory systems too, but they've gone this extra step. Personally, I'm not a fan of this stuff. I think when you get into decommissioning for solar, then let's talk about decommissioning for every other use that's out there. If we're going to say when this use is done, that it's no longer useful, then let's return everything back to its natural state. I think, my opinion, I think some of this stuff is a little bit of an overreach and infringes upon private property. That's just me, right? So keep an eye out for this though. You may see this as you're working on projects in the field. Some of the minors, how we regulate this, and I have kind of 2 approaches here that you'll see with municipalities. Setbacks, a lot of times they'll match the zoning district, the underlying zoning district. You say, hey, whatever district you're in, match the setbacks for that. You may see stricter approaches that'll increase the setbacks, make them bigger for aesthetics or for noise mitigation. Impervious coverage, how that's calculated, that's the amount of impervious material that's on the site. Some municipalities will just have a flexible approach, say only the foundation systems. The equipment that's out there in the roads will be considered impervious. Some municipalities go strict and say the panels are impervious. which then really can reduce your lot. You can see if you're a residential lot and you have, say, a 60% impervious coverage limit, and you're putting some solar panels, ground mounted panels in the backyard somewhere, that can really reduce the impervious coverage available to you. And the homeowner, if they want to do some sort of deck or something out back, right? So keep an eye out for that one as well. Screening, a lot of times there'd be screening requirements. It might be a vegetative screen, maybe a fence to reduce the visual aesthetics of the solar field. Fencing and vegetation can get, out there if they want to go strict. A lot of times what we see is ordinance is more of a flexible approach. They'll require screening for similar use. It's already in the ordinance. There's nothing heightened that has to be done for solar. Glare, this is an interesting one. This is one of those issues. A lot of people say, what about glare? Steve, our solar panels designed to reflect or absorb energy. Right. So that's the thing that you see. Solar panels are designed to absorb and not reflect. There's some of the biggest solar fields are out there next to airports. Right. So sometimes this can be a little bit of an urban legend of glare. Concentrated solar is a type of solar that's out there where it does kind of use the lens to reflect it. Not really relevant, but some ordinances may say if you're looking at glare, a concentrated solar type arrangement, you need to talk about glare. But there are ordinances out there will have glare studies. They have to go out and prove that there's no glare coming on the houses and everything. So keep an eye out for that. Maybe there. Height for principal use, again, I don't see these issues, but a lot of times when an ordinance says height, if you have a panel, you're going to be, most ordinances in the residential district have a 35-foot height limit. You're not going to get way over that. You're going to put them on tops of buildings. What's an extra foot or two really matter? On the accessory side, a lot of times they'll simply say, if you're doing accessory solar, match that accessory use home. Looking to the future, just a thing to look out for, agrivoltaics. So, you have the sheep and everything that are here, putting solar above crops is kind of the future, where some of these things are headed. So you may see those applications, and may have clients that are looking to do that, but I think that's an interesting way to try and balance that agriculture and solar argument. So what's the problem? It's back to the question. Why do people hate these things? And I say that because I've sat through many night meetings where people hate these things. Aesthetics, they don't want to look at them. I was always told though, if you want to protect the view, what do? You buy the view, right? So if you want the view, buy the view. Okay, so a lot of the neighbors they'll complain about what their neighbor's doing. Meanwhile, what's their property, right? So you have that a lot of times, right? This is actually this is the project in Franklin County, one of the larger ones in the state. This is principal solar, but glare, we talked about that, right? I'm not. The systems I've seen, I really don't think that's a big issue. Noise, everybody complains about noise. Steve, are systems noisy? No. You get like,
If you're hearing your solar panels, there's a problem.
you get some of the principal ones that are bigger. Folks say, well, there's inverters and stuff that run, but lately I've been doing some of my own research with all the data center stuff, because data centers, that's one of the big concerns, like noise. So I put a little phone like noise sensor on my phone, and out back of my house, I'll turn it on. And it's interesting to see what baseline noise levels are. So a lot of data centers ordinance are like 55 decibels to 60 decibels, can't exceed that. In my backyard, laying in my hammock, I get that a lot, especially when my neighbor's air conditioning comes on. Right? That's where I think this noise thing may be a little overrated. Safety, there's always concerns. Well, what if a kid goes over there and touches something? And can they get electrocuted, Steve?
Well, I mean, it depends on if they're installed properly, no, but grounding and things like that, and you all have dealt with contractors that haven't done things correctly. There's that possibility, but in my experience, I've never seen anything like that happen.
So safety comes up for the big principal projects. Typically there's fencing, everything that's required around that. Also, the issue that has come up in the one municipality that I cover, there was a lot of debate over a principal solar project where one of the neighbors was really upset. Well, what's in these solar panels? What are they going to be leaking out? So despite the fact that the farm that this was being proposed on was a biosolids farm. And the farmer regularly uses, sprays and herbicides and stuff. They missed the point on this stuff. That's maddening. That they're concerned about the safety of a solar project, but yet miss the point of what they're living next to right now. There's raw manure that's being spread on the field next to you. You have no concerns about that? So, all right, so I'm off my soapbox now. That was a long meeting that night. Never get that 3 hours back.
Sounds like it's from the door.
It does. Competing land use priorities. So I talked earlier about a lot of times this comes down to, do we want alternative energy or do we want farmland? And in many cases, that farmland argument is very powerful. I think sometimes it's more of an open space type argument, less so farmland, but nonetheless, it's powerful. Go ahead.
Okay, you just triggered a question
Yeah.
for me. Do the solar panels radiate anything like radiation or?
I'll turn to the expert, but.
Okay.
I mean, you realize like there's an electromagnetic field around any electrical device.
Right.
So this will not be anything different. So a panel ends up sending electromagnetic energy, there's a field around it. But it is no different than, you plug in your phone in or like that at all. So there's no all those, I've had to deal with the fallacies about that for a long time. No, there's nothing like that.
The last one here is political ideology. And this is one that I actually saw, especially over the last 4 to 5 years, that solar and some municipalities, when folks come into it, they look, this is some big left-wing conspiracy. And like, you know what? We're not having solar in this municipality because that's not the way we lean politically. And this is part of Biden's new Green Deal. We want no parts of it. I've seen that, and that happens, right? And a lot of times then when you see projects come forward, the room fills then with folks that have different political ideologies on this, and they argue against it simply because of politics. So it's just interesting how some of the stuff gets down to the local level of projects like this that people want to do, and then there's these bigger issues that come up. So the future, Steve touched on some of this, some of the federal policy changes on alternative energy versus market conditions. So that gets to back some of the tax credits that are expiring, but yet we see the increasing rates from our utility providers. Insatiable energy demands. Again, I didn't put data centers up there. That's, you're seeing that, like the one in Cumberland County of Middlesex Township, that data center has the energy demands of Pittsburgh for one business, right? So you can see these insatiable energy demands. If we only have so much generation throughout the PJM region, of our electrical grid, if there's only so much generation and you have these big projects come on, sucking up that generation and no new generations coming on, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to run out of generation, prices are going to go up. Okay, so that's that market condition that I think the solar stuff can really be a hedge against. And the final piece here, we're working on some stuff now with our municipalities on battery energy storage systems. So to me, it's the next step. So you have this solar, instead of pushing everything back to the grid, can we store it on site and then use it later? And then from the principal standpoint too, as it gets bigger and bigger, will we have land uses that are our principal uses of battery energy storage systems? They're coming. We're looking at some other communities where we're seeing they're at now. They're a big fire hazard in some areas that they're really tough to deal with from a fire capacity. But I believe like in this area too, as we see some of this stuff with data centers unfold, electric rates going up, I think that land use is going to be something that we see. So that's all I had. Any questions on? Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, how many counties you get solar panels in the house and trigger every time every assessment, or does it exist?
No, so if it's principal, I actually asked our chief assessor this morning. Let's see, she said that when we're looking at principal solar, we're putting them on our assessment goals at $27,000 an acre. Okay, but if it's just an accessories, we're not taxing those at the moment. So, and keep in mind when we put stuff on the tax rolls, we're putting them on not at 2026 values, but 2010 values. That's the last time we did a reassessment. Any other questions?
Just a comment, I've been to several meetings, and sometimes liver will show up, And like you said, they last 3 hours, and I think a lot of it is people just aren't educated, like, is it cost case for me? And it's just, I think, the perception of it, because they're just so scared of something new. But after our long meeting, the people will come in and say, oh, we can have solar on our, like, it's an educational thing. And I think that just some of our biggest hurt is trying to get over, you know, the community that wants to fight.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of this is really understanding how it works, understanding the benefits of it, and that you sit down and really explain some of the stuff, folks, maybe their opinion changes.
Oh, yes.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Creline. I'm an attorney with Dethlefs, Pykosh, and Murphy in Camp Hill. Daryl Dethlefs was supposed to be doing this one, but he got stuck in Chicago last night when his flight got canceled. So I'm here. I'm just going to talk very briefly about aspects of solar energy in the context of mostly residential real estate sales. How it affects things like mortgages and financing and stuff like that. Basically, most of the time, if there are solar panels installed on a property, it's going to be considered to be a fixture, which is considered to be part of the real estate. Basically, the definition of a fixture is something that cannot be removed from the property without causing damage to either the real estate or to the item that's being removed. Solar panel, and also integral to the property. Solar panels probably can be removed, but the definition isn't really all that strict. So 99.9% of the times, the solar panels are going to be deemed to be fixtures as part of the real estate. The exception is if you have a seller who's going to sell a house that has solar that intends to remove it before the house is sold, that has to be disclosed to the buyers that the solar is going to be gone when they buy property. The other issue is in terms of getting a mortgage, it really depends on, is the solar system owned by the homeowner, or is it one of these lease and chargeback deals? If the solar system is owned by the property owner, there is most likely a UCC1 financing statement filed. So if that system is not completely paid off at the time the house is sold, that's going to have to be dealt with as any other lien against the property is probably going to have to be paid off at closing. If it's a situation where there's a lease agreement and a deal with either a solar company or with the utility, the buyer is going to have to be able to step in and take over that arrangement. That's going to have to work out with the solar company or with the utility. And that's basically it. I mean, there really aren't any major drawbacks or setbacks or anything in terms of selling a property that has solar on it. If anybody has any questions. Yes.
Do you have any information about, like, deal with some foreclosure properties? And we've had different instances where, one company decided that the new purchaser of foreclosed property was gonna have to take over the payments of the system, and then we've had other ones where, the solar company just vanished.
Right. Well, I mean, that's part of it. You don't know. Some of these solar companies are reliable and they've been around. Some of them, popped up overnight like mushrooms and then disappeared. So it's going to depend on who that company is. I know a lot of times with foreclosure properties, I mean, I spent most of my time in New Jersey. I came to Pennsylvania like 3.5 years ago, and the banks really don't care about selling the property. I mean, they'll let them sit. They won't maintain them. They won't cut the grass. A lot of municipalities have trouble with those properties that are in foreclosure. I don't know if it's gotten any better, but that's a special circumstance, and I think they just have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's any overall general thing. It depends on who the lender is, who holds the mortgage, how badly they want to get rid of the property, what the deal is, whether it's going to go to a tax sale or something on that nature. Yes.
There's something like a leasing place and homeowner or potential buyer doesn't want to have this option. Can they like reject continuing to lease?
Well, I mean, the issue would be, I believe, and I prefer to see on, so I believe that they'd have to remove the system that was on release and, maybe if the buyer didn't want the house with the solar on it. If the buyer wanted the house with the solar on it, the buyer would have to work something out with the solar company, with the leasing company.
If there was a purchase agreement and they were making payments, could they also, well, I guess that would be.
Well, that would be, if that would be in the case of an owned system, and there would probably be a UCC one financing statement filed on that, which means the seller of the system or whoever's holding the lien on the system would be entitled to be paid off, and that should show up when they do a title search. That should show up as a lien against the property, and that whatever was due on that at the time the house is sold would probably have to pay it at the closing to relieve that, satisfy that debt, unless the creditor could, reach an accommodation and agree to continue payments from the buyer. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Get out of here a little early.
Yeah.